The Georgia Republican Party is committing suicide like the Texas Republican Party is right now. Beholden to a chamber of commerce, they need social conservatives to come vote for them, and they just use them and abuse them. They want their votes, but please shut up. They are beholden to the Chamber of Commerce. The only time they do socially conservative things is when they know they'll never go into effect. Using the Chamber of Commerce model, the Republicans here in Georgia, they do what Delta wants. They do what Home Depot wants. They do what Coca-Cola wants. They don't do what you want. For years, Republicans in Georgia campaigned on passing the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Georgia is one of the few states in the nation that doesn't have it. Back in the day, Bill Clinton and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi wrote it and passed it. And the Democrats in Georgia didn't think they needed it. They said, well, that'll never happen here. We don't need this. Now the Republicans are in charge, and it's happening. You've got the governments of small towns and big cities imposing their will on Christians, and the Republicans are like, well, we can't do this because Hollywood will leave. We need the money. But they've campaigned on it. The year was 2000. When was it? 2013? No, 2012. It must have been 2012. The Republicans in Georgia finally passed RFRA. Nathan Deal had campaigned on signing it into law if it was ever passed. All the Republicans said they'd do it, and then they blocked it every year. And in 2012, Nathan Deal was not up for re-election, but all the Republicans in the legislature were, so they passed it. Deal told them privately he would veto it. So they passed it, saying, oh, we did it. It's that damn governor who vetoed it. It's his fault, not our fault. They never would have passed it had he not promised to veto it. So they could claim they passed it, do a bait and switch, and never actually have to live with it. Last year, Republicans in the state legislature passed the fetal heartbeat legislation. Multiple Republicans voted for it, not because they support it, but because they knew it would never get passed into law. A federal judge would stop it. They could take the heat, and then they could go back and say, I'm so conservative, I voted to save those babies, knowing that if there was ever a chance a federal judge would let it go into law, there's no way they would have voted for it. In the early 2000s, Jennifer Keaton was a student at Augusta State University. She's an open Christian who believes homosexuality is a sin, but she's still lovingly willing to counsel anyone who is gay, transgender, you name it. She's willing to be a counselor and a friend to anyone. But she's an Orthodox Bible-believing Christian, including on biblical sexual ethic. Augusta State University came to her and said she needed to renounce her religion if she was going to stay in the counseling program. They couldn't have a Christian in the program who really believed Christianity. In fact, they wanted her to take classes showing her how the Christian religion was full of bigotry towards people who were not heterosexual, straight, cisgendered. And she declined. They threw her out of the program. She sued in federal court and lost. A few years later, two students at Georgia Tech who were Christians and ran conservative groups on campus were called in. One of them was called into the dean of students and told the student was a shameful bigot, and that if her organization, the College Republicans, did not want to participate in Coming Out Week to celebrate gay pride, that the organization was a shameful organization and it needed to be sidelined on campus, and they were forced to go to a tiny corner of campus no one ever visited, and that was the only place they could talk. She stuck to her guns, continued to practice her religion and be open about it on campus, was headed towards graduation with top honors at Georgia Tech. And the president of the university called her into his office to inform her she needed to go find somewhere else to graduate from unless she was going to repudiate her Christian faith. They didn't need intolerant Christians like that at Georgia Tech. She wound up having to file a federal lawsuit. All this stuff, I'm not making this stuff up. This is in the federal record. These things happened to this student. Not only did these things happen to the student, but the campus, Georgia Tech, a state-funded institution, decided to start publishing a guide to the religions that were present on Georgia Tech's campus in order of tolerance. The Buddhists, who believe nothing, so they believe everything, were listed as the most tolerant. The Southern Baptists were listed as the most intolerant group on campus. All of this again in a federal court record. Georgia Tech was brutalized by the federal court system, lost the case. But the student had to go to graduation with armed police officers because she was receiving so many death threats, and the university did nothing to stop the threats and harassment against her. They were so hateful of her that she was a Christian bigot. They wanted her gone from campus. And when people started groups to oppose her on campus and started harassing her and giving her death threats and graphic depictions of the rapes they would commit on her and the like, the university did nothing. The university lost. On Monday of this week, Georgia Gwinnett College became the latest Georgia public institution to lose in the United States Supreme Court for persecuting Christians on campus. 2 open evangelical Christians were told they were not allowed to talk about their faith on campus. And when they continued to do so, they were marginalized by campus security to a tiny part of campus no one visited. And yet they would continue to show up there and do it, complying with what the university said, until university security told them they weren't allowed to even be there. They filed a lawsuit. And yet again, in an 8-1 decision, 9-0 on the merits, written by Clarence Thomas, yet again, Christians beat a Georgia public institution. This has been going on for 2 decades now in Georgia, and our state legislature has done absolutely nothing. They have passed no laws, and they have conducted no investigations. As I have mentioned repeatedly on this program, the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles has released after 7 years from prison a man dubbed by the judge who sentenced him to 1,000 years in prison, the world's most prolific collector of child pornography. This man, it was discovered at trial, has a compulsion towards child pornography and predatory behavior. He's now on the streets of Atlanta, thanks to the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles. The Georgia Court of Appeals upheld the 1,000-year prison sentence and said it was not excessive. And 2 weeks later, the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles let him out after 7. According to the court record, the man had more than 26,000 pictures and videos of child pornography, not just pictures of naked kids. He had pictures and videos of children, young kids, being raped and tortured. And he's out on the streets in Atlanta because of the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles. And our legislature has done nothing. They have not investigated. They have not legislated. They have not impeached. But in November, Donald Trump lost by 11,000 votes, and the Republicans lost 2 Senate seats. And the Georgia Republicans are convinced their days may be at an end in power. And so they are moving heaven and earth to restrict absentee balloting and early voting and make it more burdensome to vote. And they're telling you they're doing it for you. They're telling you they hear your concerns about the integrity of the election. But are they doing it for you, or are they doing it for them? They never seem to act when it's you and your kids. This week in the Georgia legislature, they have killed legislation that would allow the children of active duty military stuck in closed public schools to have access to private schools. They've killed legislation that would allow special needs kids to have access to alternative school systems and private education if their public schools are closed and they can't get in to meet their independent, customized program within public schools. They have killed legislation that would protect girls from boys competing on girls' athletic teams. They have killed legislation to protect girls' sports. They have killed legislation that would help homeschoolers in after-school programs. They have killed every measure designed to improve the lives of Georgia's families. But they've done the Chamber of Commerce's bidding, and now they're working to protect their power. Time and again, the Georgia Republicans in the Georgia legislature turn a blind eye to your concerns. They won't investigate or impeach the Board of Pardon and Paroles for letting out of prison after 7 years a man sentenced to 1,000 years with a predatory predilection for preying on your children. They won't investigate Georgia's publicly funded colleges and universities for repeatedly persecuting Christians, doing the same thing on multiple institutions, and then only walking it back when the students were brave enough to sue. They won't protect your daughters in their sports. They won't protect you in your homes, but they'll protect our Fortune 500 companies, and they'll protect themselves. This is the suicide of the Republican Party. The same thing is happening in Texas, where Texas continues to claim to be the Republican conservative independent state and yet continually sells out its voters, its conservatives, its Christians. They talk a good game in Texas. All my friends love Texas. I love Texas too. But the governor and the legislature continue to poop on the citizens of Texas who actually are conservative and Christian, scared to death their days are numbered. They're doing everything they can to appear to be Democrat, given just a little bit they're Democrat light, but you can't beat the real thing in Texas or in Georgia. At some point, the voters in both states are going to say, well, y'all gave it a go, and you did nothing different from them except you didn't give us as much as they want to give us. So maybe we should go with the real thing. And these Republicans who have sold you out, sold people of faith out, sold your kids out, protected a board of pardon and parole that protects child predators, protected schools that persecute Christians, and protected themselves from the voters, their days are numbered, and they've only got themselves to blame.